So the Zack Snyder Justice League is coming out, the Snyder Cut. It's a cut that's been anticipated for years now, ever since the original theatrical cut has been released and people were disappointed. Now, I'm not going to go into the tragic events that caused Zack Snyder to not finish his version of the movie, and we all know what happened, and Joss Whedon came in and basically butchered it. For years now, this movie has been criticized heavily. When it was first released, a lot of YouTubers liked it. A lot of moviegoers seemed to enjoy the movie. But, however, I had a script written for this. I was just going to sit down and go scene by scene. But then I realized I just kept repeating myself because every scene is just not very good. So I'm going to tell you about some of the highlights and some of the not so great things about this movie. Right off the bat, the worst thing that you can constantly see in this film is the CGI. The CGI is terrible. From Steppenwolf, who we'll get to as a villain for this movie, to Cyborg, to some of the background shots, you can tell this movie just had a terrible process in the special effects department. Some of the backgrounds just look like a pre-rendered background with Batman or whoever standing in front of it, and you can clearly tell it's green screen. It looks awkward as hell. The editing in the movie goes from okay to garbage. An example of it is the beginning scene with Batman when he's basically dodging bullets from this burglar, and it just cuts from all these different angles, and it looks like a mess, and it gives you a headache, and it's just awful, and that's throughout the whole movie. Steppenwolf as a villain is horrible. I don't know how people saw this movie and thought he was a good villain. One, he looks like a CGI PS2 blob. They gave him eyebrows. He looks goofy as hell. He has no characterization, besides one flashback scene, which tells you all of his motivation is he just is here to conquer the world, because that's who he is. He mentions Darkseid once, which is the main big bad guy of the Snyder Cut, but other than that, the general movie audience shouldn't really know who he is because the movie doesn't give you anything. One good thing I like about this movie is Barry Allen, the Flash. Most of his scenes and 90% of his lines are just comedic, besides his opening scene, which I think is a great character introduction, about his father, who was falsely accused of murdering his wife, and Barry Allen's motivation to become a hero is to go into the criminal justice system and prove that his father is innocent. But the biggest flaw of this movie is that they do nothing with it. They don't mention it to Batman at all, who's the world's greatest detective. You'd think that he could help him out somehow. That scene is in the movie and it's really good, but then the rest of the movie he's just telling jokes. They don't mention him going to college at all, getting a job in criminal justice whatsoever the rest of the movie, until the very end where he meets his father again and goes, I have a job in criminal justice now. It just comes out of nowhere. They don't address it whatsoever. All of his lines are just one-liners or jokes. Cyborg is a really weak character in this. They have a scene with him where they just explain everything that happened to him through exposition, but it's filled with the mother box lore, his relationship with his father, his relationship with the world, the accident that happened to him, what happened to him to make him become Cyborg. It's a mess of a scene because it's just spoonful shoveling information down your throat, and it just doesn't work. Then there's some directorial choices of the movie which just don't make sense. Just odd things when you're watching where you would sit there and go, I would do that a little differently. Some lines, the way they're delivered, are cringeworthy. It's just not a very tight movie. It's a mess. Although I will admit that some of it is just dumb fun. It's not as good as The Avengers. It's not as good as 90% of Marvel movies. But it's not the worst superhero movie ever made. A lot of people, when I told them I was rewatching this, were like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I wanted to do it just to compare this to the Snyder Cut, because I don't know how well the Snyder Cut can be if this is the movie we got before. My hopes are not that high, but we'll see. I'm keeping my expectations at a minimal. But this original theatrical cut of Justice League it's not very good. And I know this was a kind of a rushed review. I just don't think this movie's really worth talking about. I wouldn't go see it. If you've never seen this movie, wait till the Snyder Cut. It's going to be longer. Hopefully it doesn't feel as rushed or as sloppy as made as the theatrical cut. And this just goes to show you that Warner Brothers really should have just waited for Snyder to return instead of rushing this movie out, because it's a mess. and we see the tonal shift they were trying to go for, which led to movies like Aquaman and Wonder Woman 2 to be more lighthearted. But this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. So I'm giving a final score of the Justice League theatrical cut a 5 out of 10. It's average. It's an average superhero movie. It's nothing spectacular, obviously, but it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. Some more things I like are Batman. Ben Affleck as Batman is fine. There's just some scenes where I don't know if it's a director telling him what to do, but he looks tired and bored. Some of his lines that are more comedic just don't land for me. He's Batman. He shouldn't be the one saying those lines. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is great. Henry Cavill is my favorite Superman. Jason Momoa, Aquaman, is fine, even though I don't like Aquaman, the movie, very much. Maybe we'll get to that later in some point in the future. I am excited for the Snyder Cut, though, a little bit, because it is going to be longer, which is good because this movie's only 2 hours, and you can definitely tell it was rushed and edited and butchered, because there's just the whole flow of the movie, the pacing of the movie is horrible. The editing of the movie is horrible that I talked about. So a longer Snyder Cut version of this film should be good. The one thing I am looking forward to the Snyder Cut is that it's going to be a longer version of this film. You can tell really watching this movie that it is rushed and butchered. The pacing is all over the place. So a longer Snyder Cut version of this could provide room for the movie to breathe and have a better pacing. But that's Justice League. It's okay. It's whatever. It's an average movie. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Not as bad as most people make it out to be, I guess. But it's not good. It's really, really average. Very forgettable. I haven't watched this movie since it was released, and I'm probably not going to watch it anytime soon in the near future. Once is enough. We're done. So here's the Snyder Cut. Comment if you think that's going to be good. Do you have faith in the Snyder Cut? I'm not really sure if I do. I'm going to keep my expectations minimal, but we'll see. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time with the Snyder Cut.